So, you all have, some of you have met me a few times, and the rest of you sort of met me with the panel this morning. I want to just say, first of all, that what an awesome community conference it's been. Again, I've been here for a few days. I was here for the research conference, and then, as Andy Sholkoff has mentioned, how incredible it is to have the research conference overlap with the community conference to interact with the people who are working so hard to solve our disease. And once again, just an extraordinary experience. I think most of you would agree. And as I'm not sure if Deborah Jarvis is still here, but she pointed out this morning. Oh, there you are. So your comment this morning was, of course, bang on, insightful. This really is like family. Those of us who have been around fortunately been around for quite a long time with this illness. It's like greeting old friends every time we come and we interact and we see people that we haven't seen perhaps for a year or two, but we connect again. It's really a wonderful and a warm feeling. And I should say too, the size of the Chordoma community, the size of the group that meets, it seems larger every time. And I was thinking earlier, it's grown so much that it's almost the same size now as my biological family. Because I have 11 brothers and sisters. I'm the seventh of 7 boys. That's why I'm so short. My parents ran out of DNA toward the end. And I have 5 sisters. So, you got to take the bad with the good in life. And my siblings, sort of like myself, haven't been too shy about procreating. And so we have a large clan, and the clan is sort of like this size, so it really does feel like family. I should tell you just a little bit about my own story again, just to reiterate. So I've been living with Chordoma for 11 years, 2007. Clival Chordoma, fairly large when I found it, when we found it. It had probably grown with symptoms for a few years. I had a pain in my neck, really, nothing more, just a pain in the neck. And really the only reason I got it checked out in the end was because my wife, who is an obstetrician gynecologist, finally prevailed upon me to get it checked out properly, to get an MRI. And I've said to a group similar to this before that it stands still as the only example of a brain tumor being diagnosed by a gynecologist. It's true. I'm still working on the case report, but I'm sure it'll be published in the New England Journal of Medicine sometime soon. So in any event, so I had my world was rocked, of course. Many of you know what that's like. At the time, I had 2 young children, medical practice. My wife was working hard, I was working hard, and then this thing came along and just steamrolled us. And so I had surgery, 2 surgeries, ended up here in this city to have proton radiation with the famous Dr. Leach, and then went home to sort of lick my wounds and recover. And eventually did, and eventually I went back to work, and the years rolled on. I had 2 more children, which is proof, I suppose, that it doesn't impair your fertility, at least. So, now I have 4 children. And then for roughly 8 years, despite serial scans, I had a small residual. Nothing seemed to be happening. And at the 8-year mark, I had a recurrence. And with that recurrence, I had, again, a craniotomy, another surgery to remove it. It's a story that's familiar to some of you. In the aftermath of the surgery, the meeting with the surgeon, things went really well. Pretty sure we got it all. And then the scans to follow showed, of course, that they hadn't got quite all of it. And a bit more than a year later, I had another recurrence. I had surgery again. We're pretty sure we got it all. And the scans after that showed once again that there was a little residual. And now, just in the last few months, I've had another recurrence. So at this stage, my oncologist decided that I should start taking this little blue pill. It's not Viagra. I'm pretty sure. I wouldn't know. But, you know, hey, there shall be no heckling. So I'm cautiously optimistic that it's actually the elixir of youth, because one thing it has done is it has caused to flower my long-forgotten adolescent acne. It's just wonderful to get to relive those tortured years of my teenager years where I get to look at pimples in the mirror every morning. It's just awesome. So, you know, I think one of the priorities, Andy, where are you? Right there. So maybe you could take this to the esteemed group of researchers. One of their priorities should be to solve this nasty side effect of afatinib, because, you know, acne, on the scale of problems, that's a big one. So I don't know, and then by the way, so there was some talk earlier about having your tumor sequenced. The reason I reached for afatinib was because I'm using that information in this way. We have evidence based on the work of the Chordoma Foundation that afatinib may well work in some chordomas. There's a clinical trial actually about to get off the ground in Holland and Italy and London, I think those 3 sites. It was just starting a little bit too late for me, but it was really based on the hard work of the Chordoma Foundation's team of researchers that we really thought to look there in the first place and have this information based on which I could reach for this drug. I have no idea really at this point whether it'll work, but that's where we are. So, and we all have stories like this. It's difficult. Cancer sucks, to put it mildly. My wife and I, we have busy lives. We didn't need cancer to add to our problems, not that we have a lot of problems, but to add to our busyness, shall I say. How many of you in this room remember an author, he's gone now, Dr. Scott Peck? The people my vintage and older. Dr. Peck wrote a book called The Road Less Traveled. And it was a very popular book. He sold, I think, about 10 or 15 million copies of this book. And there's the first couple of lines of that book are famous. Make sure I get them right here. Life is difficult. This is a great truth, one of the greatest truths. The title, of course, of his book came from Robert Frost's poem, the great poet, The Road Not Taken. And the lines you could probably quote back at me: 2 roads diverged in a wood, and I took the one less traveled by, and that has made all the difference. And the road that we travel, those of us with Chordoma, no question, one of the roads less traveled. We hear all the time, we're 1 in a million. But of course, we didn't get to choose the road. It was chosen for us. We were stuffed down that pathway, whether you like it or not. We didn't get to choose. We didn't get to choose. The road is hard, sometimes lonely. We didn't get to choose it. But we do get to choose how we make that journey. We do get to choose how we respond. And it's not just a platitude. You know, I hate platitudes. And I think most of us who have dealt with real struggle and difficulty, hardship and loss, you hate platitudes. I was just having a conversation earlier about this sort of thing. You have to be forgiving of people who offer you platitudes all the time, because really, other people don't know what to say. Let them have that. Just go easy on them. It's okay that they give you platitudes, but I still hate them. I still do an internal eye roll. I don't like them. But still, we do get to choose how we respond. You know, I think is Woody Allen still alive? He's still alive, isn't he? So Woody Allen, I found this quote from Woody Allen. You know, he has a lot of these sorts of quotes. He's a funny man, dark humor often, but funny. He said, "Life is full of loneliness and misery and suffering and unhappiness, and it's all over much too quickly." So you have to understand Woody Allen's sense of humor. He was kidding, I think. You know, and Woody Allen's opinion on death. What's your opinion on death, Woody? I'm against it. Well, obviously, so am I. So are you. We're against it. But the question for us is whether we want to do loneliness and misery and suffering and happiness, or are we going to choose to do it differently? And the very fact that you all are here in this room at this conference, engaged and proactive and interested and looking for solutions and supporting each other is proof positive that you are doing it differently. And I think that it's really just a wonderful thing that you have made the effort and taken the time and seized the initiative to come here to look for solutions for yourselves and to help other people. When I was preparing these remarks, when I started to prepare these remarks a week or so ago, I was at home. It was a weekend. My wife was in the city to the north of us with my oldest daughter, who's 13. She's a competitive swimmer. And she texted me, my wife texted me. She said, well, Megan hasn't swum yet, but she said, the most amazing thing, there's a girl here, a para swimmer, so a disabled swimmer, who has no legs and one functional arm. And she just swam the 100-meter freestyle in 2 minutes. She swam with no legs and one arm. She swam freestyle 100 meters. And I thought, it struck me, what an awesome metaphor for those of us who have struggles of any description, really, particularly for us as Chordoma warriors. We all have our issues, our physical disability, our mental struggles, our worry and our hardship, our loss. But we choose to keep on swimming. We choose to keep going forward. And I gotta say, I like our style. It's freestyle. It's awesome. There's a gentleman who's been in the news for the last week and a half because he died, the great physicist Stephen Hawking. And when I was preparing these remarks, I thought, colleagues of two great physicists that we have here, I'm not sure if Bill and Rob are in the room. I can't easily pick them out. But we have two great physicists who are Chordoma warriors in our community, both of whom, Rob and Bill, both of whom have been instrumental in the formation of the Chordoma Foundation and driving it forward and making sure that the initiatives that we set are reached. Stephen Hawking was diagnosed, as you all know, you'd have to live under a rock, I suppose, not to know this, but Stephen Hawking was diagnosed at the age of 21 with Lou Gehrig's disease, which is a motor neuron disease, robs you of all ability to move, and typically rapidly fatal. So I lost count in the days after he died, how many times I read in the newspaper, or on my phone more likely, how Stephen Hawking was diagnosed at the age of 21 with Lou Gehrig's disease, and he was given 2 years to live. He was given 2 years to live. And really, what utter nonsense, really. Those years to live are not a doctor's to give. And we've all been there. You sit across the desk from a surgeon or a physician, an oncologist. And it's human nature. We look at that man or that woman and we say, well, how long do I have? And it's not really, usually not the physician's fault, but pushed, they say, well, they look at the evidence, the literature, and on average, and they give you that average number. So for Chordoma, traditionally, it's been 7 years. And then people go home and they say, I've got 7 years to live. Or, in Stephen Hawking's case, I've got 2 years to live. And one of the most ridiculous things I read about Stephen Hawking was, he lived with a death sentence for 55 years. Really? He lived with a death sentence for his entire life. Well, don't we all? Even the best doctors, every single top doctor I know has a 100% mortality rate. Everybody dies, so far. So those of you who are dreaming of immortality, let me know when it happens. I'm interested too, like Woody Allen, I'm against death too. But so far, it hasn't happened for anyone. And this business of a doctor giving you time to live, obviously, you need the information for planning. It's sensible to know what the numbers are. It's sensible to know sort of what you can expect. But what we've learned in spades, and you heard I hope in the last day or so, how chordoma is a different disease in every person. It's like Forrest Gump. You remember Forrest Gump, the movie? Life is like a box of chocolates. You never know what you're going to get. You don't know if you're going to get a rapidly progressive form of chordoma. You don't know whether you're going to have an indolent, slow-growing form of chordoma. You don't know whether you're going to live 2 years or 55 years like Woody Allen, like Stephen Hawking. You don't know. And those numbers, they can be useful, but sometimes they're problematic because, as humans, we tend to look at people that beat the number. So if you are 20 years out as a chordoma survivor, we pat you on the back, congratulations, you're tough as nails, and we give people credit for beating the number. And some of that credit, of course, is deserved. People are resourceful and they're tenacious and they look for solutions and they lean on their family and their support. But most of the reason for why they live so much longer is because their disease has allowed them to live longer. Because don't forget, the people that don't make the number, my colleague Greg Roberts, a physician like myself, he was diagnosed with skull-base chordoma in his second to last year of residency. And Greg was well-connected, well-supported, tenacious, resourceful. And no matter what he did, his tumor came back. He died less than 5 years after his diagnosis. So I would only say, I suppose, out of that, just to be cautious, respect and remember that people who have rapidly progressive disease, respect their struggle and respect their battle. And of course we celebrate the fact that people live longer. But we do understand that in every person, a cancer diagnosis is a different thing. Dr. Patrick Chung, I think that's how you pronounce his name, the $9 billion man who was here telling us about his exciting research. He pointed out that all cancers are rare cancers. And here I thought I was special. 1 in a million. It's sort of like friends with benefits. I've become good friends with the chordoma over the years. And, the benefit is that I'm so special, 1 in a million. Patrick's talk was like an illumination for me that every single cancer in every one has its signature, has its particular fingerprint, its particular way that it behaves, and then influenced by the environment in which it lives. So influenced by the person in which it lives and by their environment and by their exposures, etc., etc., etc. Dr. Flanagan in the panel this morning, she explained well to the group, the difference between conventional chordoma and dedifferentiated chordoma, partially differentiated chordoma, and that was complex enough, but that's only the tip of the iceberg. Dedifferentiated chordoma has thousands of types. And cancer is like a chameleon. It has 1,000 faces. It's constantly shape-shifting. It's like fighting with the wind. Really incredible. But what is also incredible is the work that we've done at the Chordoma Foundation to try to nail that beast down. And I think, this is not a platitude, I think that cancer has met its match in the Chordoma Foundation. What we've done at the foundation is nothing short of incredible. We have a rare disease. We have a rare resource. I think it's almost impossible for most of us to really understand how different our experience is with our rare disease compared to what most people in similar situations with different disease face. We are incredibly blessed. We have incredible opportunity. We have the ability to come to hear cutting-edge research in real time. We have physicians and researchers, clinicians, who stick around to tell us what they're doing, who will go on for hours. I'll bet you if we ran that panel this morning for 6 hours, they would still be sitting here happily. It's like trying to turn off a spigot every time I ask a question. I was like, I got 55 more questions, buddy. And they just kept on talking. You could feel the energy and the enthusiasm. We're so lucky and so blessed to have the efforts of the Chordoma Foundation. Sorry, I got a bit off track. Right, so back to Stephen Hawking. So Stephen Hawking said once, there should be no boundary to human endeavor. Speaking of things that we're all different, cancer is different. We are all different. However bad life may seem, and believe me, he knew this in spades, however bad life may seem, there is always something you can do and succeed at. Where there is life, there is hope. And a key driver of the hope for us is the work of the Chordoma Foundation. At lunchtime today, we had several tables where, so-called round tables to talk about fundraising initiatives. And I just want to speak about that for a second, because we rightfully applaud the efforts of fundraisers who raise a lot of money. Of course we do. If somebody gives an anonymous gift of $1 million, there's hallelujahs all around. Absolutely. If somebody works hard like Stephen Golick did to do a jazz concert in Toronto and raises $250,000, awesome. Of course. But it's important to remember, it's also okay to raise $5. Many people raising $5 is a lot of money, particularly if you do it over and over and over again. So whether you raise $5 or $500 or $1,000 or $250,000, or you win the lottery and you give all of your $50 million winnings to the Chordoma Foundation. I know it's going to happen. It's all important, and we need everybody to pull in the same direction on this score, because if you heard from Joel Beckman last night in his wonderful speech, the Chordoma Foundation needs millions of dollars in the upcoming years. What's the number, Andy? 14 million? A lot of money. 16 million, there's the number. We need millions of dollars to make this incredible effort continue to move forward, because we are on the cusp of something great. There are so many exciting clinical trials in the pipeline with real promise for the first time in the history of the Chordoma Foundation. And I say the history of the Chordoma Foundation, I can scarcely believe myself. It's been 11 years. That's just a flicker of time in the history of most research organizations. The leadership that Josh has brought to bear, the fact that we have someone like Josh, I think somebody referred to you as a child today, Josh. You were essentially a child at the beginning. He was 18. You know, we think about that. Most people at that age, and what he's been able to accomplish, it's like he's heaven sent for this purpose. That's how I see it. It's like he's heaven sent. He was afflicted with the same diagnosis as us, as those of us who have chordoma, as those of us who have lost someone to chordoma. And he has an intellect that is incredible, a talent set that is unbelievable. And he's been able to pull together an incredible group of men and women to help us solve this thing. We have to. We have to move it forward. And every effort, every contribution matters. If you do not think that small contributions matter, you remember the words of the Dalai Lama. If you think that small things don't matter, try sleeping in a small room with a mosquito. Small things matter. And you know, we only get to live once. In 2014, there was a movie about the great physicist Hawking, about Dr. Hawking, called The Theory of Everything. That was his great goal in life, to come up with a unifying theory of everything. Great movie if you haven't watched it. Netflix. And toward the end of that movie, the filmmakers, they run the scenes of his life, scenes from the movie, they run them all backwards. They take selected scenes and they take his life from, he was 72 at the time, and they run them backwards to when he was a healthy young man, just to review the incredible landmarks of his existence. We don't get to do that. You can't live life backwards. You only get to go forward. No matter how hard it is, you only get to move forward. You put your one foot in front of the other. We all have our struggles, but there's rich meaning, as Deborah pointed out this morning, there's rich meaning in those struggles. There's so much to learn, and so much of the richness of our lives springs from that adversity. None of us would have, as you've heard multiple times, none of us would have chosen this path. If we had to go back and were given the choice, do you want to have your chordoma? Do you not want to have your chordoma? I would return mine too. But there aren't any do-overs. You have to make the best of what your life is, and there are incredible pearls of wisdom and experience that arise out of these things that are hard. One of the memorial testimonies that flashed up on the screen this morning, it's difficult to watch. All those people, some of the most profound things were said by the family members or by those Chordoma victims themselves, perhaps before they passed. There was a fellow named Marty Stahl, you may remember, that said, "You never know how strong you are until being strong is the only choice you have." And being strong is the only choice we have. The only choice we have. We have setbacks, and we have defeats, and we suffer loss. We lose loved ones, and it's painful beyond description. It's hard. But losing some battles does not mean that we lose the war. We will win the war. We will persevere, and we will win the war. So I want to leave you with the words of Edwin Markham. It's a poem that has always been a favorite of mine from back in the day when I was young and hale and hearty, and I had no idea what physical struggles lay ahead of my life. But it was a poem that resonated with me back in that day already, and resonates with me even more as I get older. It's called Victory and Defeat. Defeat may serve as well as victory to shake the soul and let the glory out. When the great oak is straining in the wind, the boughs drink in new beauty, and the trunk sends down a deeper root on the windward side. Only the soul that knows the mighty grief can know the mighty rapture. And sorrows come to stretch out places in the heart for joy. Thank you all for coming, for being here, for supporting the cause, for loving each other. Thank you so much.